pleasant good morning. Some wise person said to me, my morning is already good when it pleasant it good. And they reminded me of my English classes about redundancy. Sometimes maybe I'll have to give a quick English class. And can you imagine coming from an English teacher? Anyhow, good morning to you listeners and of course viewers. For those of you who are joining us live, good morning, good morning, good morning. So from now on, it's either I tell you good morning or pleasant morning. I have to remind myself because when you are accustomed doing these things, you know what happens. And there are so many redundancies that we use sometimes without even, without knowing. Especially reverse back dicker. Oh boy, that is definitely one. But we've seen it so many times. I think that we do things, without even realizing, that we're doing it. There are so many things that we do like that. But good morning and welcome to the program this morning. It is a joy to be on the program live. I like when I'm live, I like when I'm live. I just want to say good morning, especially to my friend, Miss Matthias. I hope I'm saying it right. Is Matthias or Miss Matheson? But she's in Karakou, so she knows who I'm talking about. I just want to say a special good morning to her. And for those of you who always listen to the program, I know that there are some people who say, hey, I listen to the program often. So good morning to you. And as usual, thank you very much for listening, because when you do, it makes a big difference, especially when you tell me that you do, because it encourages me a lot, So welcome again to the program and God's blessings upon you. I hope you had a really good weekend. I trust that that you are well, you and your family, that all is going well with you. And of course, you know what I usually say in this program, being well or all going well with you doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going your way. And we're going to be talking about that this morning. Yeah. Being well or saying, I hope all is well with you. Many people may assume that means, well, everything is perfect and I have no problem, so that means things are going well. That's not necessarily the definition of well in terms of where I'm going from with it. But from the place of whatever is happening in your life, you are able to cope with it. You are able to manage it. Maybe I should say manage instead of cope. Cope kind of give you a feel that things really bad and you're kind of on and just trying to fight up. But managing suggests that you have the skills and you have the strategies to be able to deal with whatever it is that is handling. Because here what? You will have to deal with a whole lot. Life is just exactly what it is, life. And a whole lot of stuff, is happening. And we just have to be able, whether we want or not, we have to be able to deal with the situations and circumstances as they come. But how we choose to deal with them, that's a big thing. This morning, I want to look at something that I really believe, an issue that I believe is, relevant to everybody, whether you profess to be a Christian or not. This program is not necessarily for Christians alone either. That's the point. But I really believe it is a human issue, or rather a human experience. And I want to talk to us about it because I do believe that, like what I'm going to be speaking about, along with many other experiences that we have as individuals, if we do not know and have the right tools to understand firstly, and examine what is really going on inside of us, why it's going on, then being able to find strategies to deal with it might be a whole different story, right? For many people, that really and truly is part of it, because what exactly are you dealing with? Sometimes, let's say when somebody is grieving, don't worry, I'll talk about what we're talking about in a while. But sometimes when somebody is grieving, people will tell them, oh, cheer up, don't bother. Telling somebody that doesn't mean that they're going to be cheered up. or that they wouldn't bother, right? And so, but understanding what's going on in the background, at least the individual themselves, understanding what's happening in the background helps a lot, right? So this morning we are going to be looking at disappointment. As I said, it's a human experience. We all experience disappointment at some point, right? At some point in our lives, we experience disappointment, and we will have to be able to say, here what? Yes, I've experienced it, but how do I go forward? A lot of the times, though, when we experience disappointment from the place of, let me just maybe try to forget, or maybe pretend that it did not happen, right? And that is certainly not, it is certainly not the way that you want to deal with disappointment, because for many people who have dealt with disappointment from the place of just pretending that it does not exist, or pretending that something did not happen that maybe really threw them off, when you are faced with a similar circumstance in the future, how you deal with it comes, and it's a whole different story again. I am going to be looking at disappointment today, not only from a spiritual place, but mostly from a psychological place, as in this is an actual practical experience and feeling that we have, and how do we treat with the circumstances of it, right? So I want to look first of all at what disappointment is. Now, the word disappointment, of course, comes from you have a root word, which is appointment, and then you have a prefix, which is this. All right, a little bit of English language class here as well. So you have a prefix. That prefix, this, actually means to reverse, or it means opposite of. It also means not. Okay? So whenever you see this in front of something, you know it's already saying don't. So if I have disregard, I'm saying don't regard it anymore, right? If I say I'm discouraged, obviously it means that I am not encouraged, or I do not have courage. So disappointment would mean that I am no longer having an appointment. That's basically what it is, right? So you have a disappointment. The thing is, though, when we are looking at disappointment, many times we tend to look at it only from the place of just a feeling. But that's why I'm going back there with the meaning of it. So the this part, of course, as I said, is not. And the appointment, the word appointment, would suggest that it is an arrangement that you have with someone for something, a pre-existing arrangement, that something, some meeting or some kind of arrangement, of course, is scheduled to happen. Okay, so when you have an appointment with the dentist, of course, it means that you have an arrangement to go at a set time to the dentist. So it's this, so you have an appointment. Now, if it is that appointment has been changed, then your appointment has been dissed, technically, yeah? You've dissed the appointment. You are no longer having that appointment. Now, when it comes to things that we deal with in our lives, my goodness, we have a whole lot of arrangements we have had. And these arrangements that we have had, a lot of the times our arrangements or our appointments gets dissed along the way. Now, I want to start with looking at arrangements or appointments that we have come up with on our own. And I will call those expectations. So a lot of people have expectations, right? You have your expectations, and sadly, expectations nothing is wrong with having an expectation. The problem is that sometimes, especially in our relationships with each other, and I'm not talking here about husband and wives alone and so forth, right? I'm not talking about marital relationships. I'm talking about relationships with other human beings, okay? Now, the issue though is while you have these expectations, a lot of the times, and I believe you would agree with me, that a lot of the times we have expectations. The persons that we have these expectations of, they're not even aware. And that can pose a big challenge. We see it happening a lot in our very personalized relationships, so like in families and so forth. We have expectations of persons. We have expectations. People could be sitting, listening to me on a Monday morning and have expectations of me as a minister. There are certain things that you expect me to do and don't expect me to do. Fair enough. The wives have certain expectations of their husbands. Husbands, of course, have certain expectations of their wives. Bosses have expectations of their employees. And I can go on with the myriad of relationships that we are involved in, that where we can have expectations. The thing is, though, with our expectations is this. So we have expectations, but as I said already, sometimes the persons that you have the expectations of are not even aware that you are expecting certain things from them. So you have some expectations that fall through. A lot of the times when we make appointments, right? And I'm not talking about a professional appointment like I use the example with the dentist. We can have some appointments or plans. Because remember, that is what the word appointment there means. An arrangement or a plan, okay? So because of our expectations, in our minds, we already make up our minds. We have appointed this. We have made the arrangement with ourselves almost, okay? And when it doesn't come true, we begin to get we feel and experience disappointment. And then, of course, we can go a whole long way with it. But let's not go into the feelings and so forth that you experience as yet. Let's just tie up that little part there. So I want to give a very practical example of an expectation that we can have that we feel disappointed about, but we may not have even discussed with the person that we are disappointed in. All right? I'm seeing some comments coming in on the live. So I'm going to check them in just a bit. Continue to share them. That'll be great. Now, you have individuals, as I said. So imagine that as a parent, I am expecting my child to, to obey me in every possible way. As a parent, you want that, right? And a lot of the times, too, we take our desires and our wants, and we turn these desires and wants, of course, into expectations. So here you are as a parent, expecting, desiring your child to be obedient to you, okay? Now, of course, we will just say, well, of course, nothing wrong with that. As a parent, you expect your children to obey. All right, I'm not saying that you don't expect them to. However, while you are expecting your children to obey you, your child has a totally different understanding or a totally different embracing about what your expectations are of him or her. So you see what's happening there? You have set yourself up because you have your expectations. You want this child to be totally obedient to you, which I'm not saying that anything is wrong with that, right? But the point is that is what you expect. The child is there in the mind and saying, watch, I don't care what mommy say there right now, no? I doing so and so, okay? So now you are disappointed in the child's behavior. Now, when that happens, we begin to have a lot of conflict, okay? Now, when we're thinking of disappointment, if we really analyze disappointment, it's not just the appointment or the arrangement being dissed. That is the issue, you know. The issue really now is, how do you feel after the arrangement that you make in your mind fell through. So like that parent, you are expecting your child to be obedient, right? And because you're expecting your child to be obedient, of course, the child may have, dissed your expectations or your arrangement in your mind. So now we can make a list of the feelings that we experience. The problem is, while the feelings might be mutual on many people's end, all of us experience a lot of feelings of that comes with disappointment. The challenge is, what do we do with those feelings? Many times we store those feelings. And when we store, especially the negative feelings that come from disappointment, feelings of bitterness, feeling of anger, feeling of frustration, and I can go on and on, but a lot of negative feelings, and you can make a list, I'm sure, for yourself. What are those feelings that you experience when you are disappointed? You feel as if the person is unreliable. You feel as if the person, you can't trust them anymore. You feel as though the person has betrayed you. And we can go on and on. The problem is this: you are the one who had your expectations. And a lot of the times we don't want to see our part to play in disappointment, right? So yes, you might not be the one who, of course, dissed the appointment or the arrangement. That's why you are feeling disappointed, of course. But you need to consider, all right, if it is that I did not expect those things that I expected of said individual, I may not have been feeling this way that I'm feeling right now. Think about it. Our expectations do a whole number on us, right? And I want you to think for a moment of the various relationships that you have, whether it be you and your ministers in church, whether it be you and your employer, you and your spouse, you and your children, you and your friends, whoever, the government of the nation. So many people have so many expectations from so many individuals in their lives. And when these expectations are not fulfilled, we feel so angry. Let me just check the comment that we have online. Somebody said some people's expectation. Who is this? Goodness Bella. I'm not sure who this is, but thank you for the comment. So let me just share it with us. She said some people's expectations are too high. Some women, for example, expectations are keeping them single by the delusion. Very true. I'm in total agreement with that. But I'm going to go back to tie in what this person shared with what I was saying, which is some people's expectations are too high. And this does not mean that you should not expect. Of course not, right? Because we have to live expecting. We have to live hoping, right? However, when your expectations, because we do put people on a pedestal, all right? We have the most hurt in our lives because we are expecting from individuals, forgetting that they are human beings. Think about it for a moment. So many of us, we are expecting. So I come on this program every Monday morning, and there are certain things I say. There are certain things that I share, right? So someone who is listening to me, especially those of you who regularly listen, there is a particular trend that I go. I'm very positive. I encourage people, whatnot. So in your mind, you are expecting Wendy to be an individual who has that type of personality, one that encourages. Maybe you might not even think of me as somebody getting annoyed too often. I don't get vexed. I will talk to people in a certain way. In your mind, because you are hearing me saying certain things on the radio, you will be expecting. You would have had a picture of me in your mind's eye, not just the physical picture now, but you have a picture of my personality. You have a picture of my character that you have set up in your mind. You have said in your mind, because she says A, B, and C, this is the kind of person I envision or I expect her to be, right? And that is what happens. So in your mind, because you've set certain standards, if you were to see me now, let's say on the street, or if I'm driving, because you think that, here what, well, based on what Wendy is saying, she's supposed to be a very quote unquote nice person. She should be very kind and she should be very patient and whatnot. So if you see me in the street, let's say running a red light, I don't, but I'm just saying, let's say you see me, I run a red light, or maybe somebody tries to overtake me and I stick my head out the window and I start to cuss the person, you will be like, hey, you'll be what? Disappointed. Because you figure the expectation that you had of Wendy, because of what she says on the radio, I did not fulfill that expectation. As a result of that, you begin to think of me. You might not even want to listen again. You might be like, that woman, please. She just said this on the radio, and look at how I see her behave when and when. And that is what we do. A lot of the times, that's what we do. We have these expectations. We see the individual not living up to our expectations, and then we get disappointed. We get angry. We feel betrayed. A lot of people feel betrayed when they are disappointed because they had these expectations. Now, the thing is this, remember I said earlier that for many people, the person that you are expecting whatever from, they may not even be aware. So like the example I just used with myself and you listening to me on the radio and you expecting a certain type of behavior from me, you have never had a conversation with me. I know that there are several individuals who have never had a conversation with me and they had formed very interesting opinions about me. I remember meeting one woman in particular. She had reached out to me. They were having some youth something. And she had reached out to me, of course. She was, I was recommended. And she reached out to me on the phone. And she, so of course we spoke. Of course you all hear my voice. My voice is very distinct and very, is heavy sounding. So when you see me in person and you hear my voice, it's like, you thought it was somebody bigger. Anyway, so when she met me, of course, I greeted her with a smile and so forth. I'm like, hi, how are you? We're supposed to meet, da-da-da-da-da. And, of course, after she said, hi, good morning, she responded just equally nicely. And then she turned and she said, you surprised me. So I'm like, what do you mean? It's the first time we meet, and so what do you mean I surprise you? Oh, the way you greeted me is not what I expected. So I'm like, well, how should I have greeted you? Well, I thought you were a rough person when I heard your voice. You understand the point I'm making? So she came to me already with an expectation. Okay? And we do this thing. As human beings, we do this thing often, where we have set up in our minds already how somebody will behave, how somebody might behave. And because of that, in some cases, because we don't want to be disappointed and we've set up ourselves, we begin to treat with the person in a certain way. All right, but we'll get into that when I talk about your past and how it affects you as it relates to disappointment. So that was it for your expectations. Now, I kind of touched on your feelings, the feelings that you experience when you are disappointed, right? You feel betrayed, you feel put off, you get angry, you feel bitter, you keep the person in your mind sometimes. You cannot seem to forget what the person, quote unquote, did to you. And that is another thing. Let me just touch on it one time. A lot of the times when we expect persons to behave a certain way towards us, and they did not behave that way, bear in mind the person may not even be aware of what your expectations were, right? Bear that in mind. But anyway, so you deal with that individual and the person did not fulfill your expectations of them, and you begin to say, well, this and that is what the person did to me. But that so-called did to you may not be really coming from the place where the person really did anything to you, But it is from the place where you have already your presupposed in thoughts and concepts in your mind concerning how that individual is supposed to behave. So, your feelings, your emotions step in, and sadly, many times by the time you feel disappointment, your emotions now are not necessarily going to be positive ones, okay? And you can do one or two things with those emotions. You can keep them in your heart and store them up and begin to deal with the individual and other people in a similar situation. You can begin to deal with other people from the place of how you felt. And that has happened so many times. I love to use my actual examples in my life, not because I want to talk about myself, but I prefer to talk about myself and don't offend anybody, because I'm not afraid or embarrassed about the mistakes and the shortcomings that I've had in my life. Instead, I see them as opportunity to learn a lot from the Lord, as opportunity to learn a lot about life, and to be able to compare and say, all right, this is how I behaved before, and this is how I ought to behave now, right? So I'm cool with sharing areas in my life that are not too pretty, because I do believe that God takes the not too pretty things, and that is what he can use to be able to turn them into beautiful roses. So I experienced something not too long ago in ministry. I don't know how many of you listening have been in ministry, and even if I'm not talking about only just church ministry as you're a pastor or anything, but just you being of service to humanity, just you being the kind of individual that might serve the community a lot. Now, being in ministry, I have been promised several things. Now, to me, I figure not just that I've been promised. When you hear somebody tell me, I'm going to give you something, no, I don't ask people for things, period. I just don't like to ask. I don't know if that is a shortcoming or a good thing, but I don't like to ask. I don't even like to ask for help. But now I have learned that no man is an island. It took a long time to learn that. Not that you don't know it in your head, but again, because you may have been disappointed in the past, you can become an individual who will say, you see me, when I depend on people, they don't come true, so I am going to do everything for myself. And that is how I used to be, right? Now, and a lot of people may not realize that you are behaving that way, or you are making decisions like that based on flaws in your past, or based on areas in your life that you are still dealing with. So as a minister, for example, people would have seen me. Let's say I asked someone to do something in church, right? And they took forever to do it, or they didn't do it. The next time, I would not ask again. At least that is how I used to be before. I figure I ask you once. Well, don't ask for if I ask you twice and 3 times. I figured I asked you already, and you said yes, and you did not give me any indication that you were unable to do what you said you were going to do. For me, I figure that is the end of that. Not that that is the end of you. I'm talking to you. But I figure, you see me, I'm not going to ask you to do anything again, because you have already disappointed me, right? Now, don't you do that sometimes? As I said, that is how I used to behave before. Now, the person who you behave that way to, that individual will turn and say, who, Wendy? Every time she asks you to do something, she just come back and do it for herself. And I'm sure maybe you fall into that category, where because of how people treated you in the past, you walk around with those experiences and you make decisions based on those experiences. We do it. If we are honest with ourselves, we do it. And a lot of the times when we do it, we don't realize that we are doing these things based on our experiences in the past. We just think, well, that's just how I am. Have you ever considered to really analyze and examine those things that you say in your life? Oh, that's just how I am. Have you ever taken the time to examine what's going on in your life and be able to say, that's how I am, but why am I this way? Why do I really do what I do? Why is it that I have made some of these decisions? So like in the example I use with me, because persons will fall through on what they promised to do, and they didn't do it, of course, they fell through. I made the decision and I said, you see me, I not trusting you again, anybody again. The problem though is this: while you might not trust the person who disappointed you again, many times it's not the person alone who disappointed us that we don't trust. We tend to not trust anybody else given a similar circumstance. And that is where we have some challenges, because you do not want to make decisions in your life based on only your past negative responses. You don't want to do that. I usually use this example when I do some personal sessions when it comes to people throwing away opportunities that they might have because they hadn't dealt with the hurt and disappointment of the past. Here an example I usually use. If a guy particularly has a preference for fair-skinned women, right? He likes, for him, his ideal woman must be fair-skinned, right? Okay. What we call a red woman. All right. Now this guy, the first fair-skinned woman disappointed him. The second fair-skinned woman disappointed him. All right. Now he still likes fair-skinned women, but the problem is now he has two hurts in his mind. All right. By then, he gets to know the Lord. And he begins to pray and to say, God, bless me with a wife. No. God comes and God sees his heart. And God decides he's going to bless him with a wife in truth. But this wife is a fair-skinned woman. But here what could happen? Because this guy may not have dealt with the circumstances of the disappointment of the first two fair-skinned women, he now says to God, you see me, I don't want to see a red woman again. I don't want to see no fair-skinned woman again, God. So even though this current woman that God wants to send to him is fitting all the criteria, there is no reason for her to hurt him. She's not doing anything wrong. But because he is judging her based on the past experiences that he has had, you know what could happen there? He can miss out on the very blessing, the prayer that he prayed. He now will not get the answer to his prayer because he did not let go of the hurt, of the disappointment of the other two. Don't you see this happening in your life sometimes? Because of disappointment, we can shut the door of many blessings. Because, hear what? A lot of the times people don't want to admit that for God to bless you, God not throwing manna out of heaven no more. Right? Things are not going to fall out of the sky random. So when you pray and ask the Lord to bless you for certain things, it's somebody He will use. So if you take the posture that says, people does disappoint you, and because people does disappoint you, I don't want to have nothing to do with nobody. And you hear people saying things like that. I don't want to hear nothing. I don't want to have nothing to do with anybody because people just hurt you. Well, if you have that posture because of disappointment, number one, you're not healed. Number two, you can miss out on several amazing benefits that God has in store for you because he's going to use human beings. The Bible says, give and it shall be given unto you. But many people stop there. They don't know the rest of the scripture that says, shall men pour into thy bosom. So when we give and God is going to give back, the giving back does not fall out of the sky randomly, right? It's somebody God is going to use to be a blessing, his blessing to you. So imagine, Lord, bless me with a job. Lord, bless me with an opportunity. You praying and saying that, right? But maybe the last time you prayed for something, you didn't get it. And I'm going there too, because a lot of people, and I believe that there are lots of people who are listening to me this morning and maybe viewing, you may be one of those you are still angry at God. Now I'm moving it a little bit. It's one thing because I've been speaking so far about how you can be disappointed in people and how those past disappointments can affect how you live your life right now. But let's go deeper. How about if you disappointed in God? Many people don't want to admit that they are disappointed in God. They prayed, they asked God for something, and it seemed as though God did not give it to you. Now, first of all, we have to come back again to expectations. Oh, somebody else is online saying good morning. Good morning. Let me just see who it is. Daisy. Good morning, my dear. So some people are in the place where they figure, I came to know the Lord, or I'm in church or whatever, and I ask God for whatever it might be. It can be healing for yourself, healing for a loved one. It can be a job. It can be a financial breakthrough. I don't know, whatever it is that you're asking God for, right? Okay. So you're asking God for whatever. But when you ask the Lord, in your mind, let's be real now, in your mind, you already make up your mind that you want what you ask God for. You put a time frame to it. And God, who is not your little boy, and he's not your magician, he's not your Santa Claus either, is not obligated to answer your prayer based on your timing. It doesn't work that way. So God who will answer in his time, you start to get vexed with God. It's a pity I'm not preaching in front of people that I can see, because now I would have said, can I have an amen? Right? Anyhow. So you're there and you figure God disappointed you. And many people don't want to say they vex with God. They feel, I don't want to say that out loud. But in your heart, you know that you blame God. And we see it a lot happening. We see this happening a lot when somebody loses a loved one. Yeah? You lose a loved one. You and the person who are really close. One of the things a lot of people do is they blame God for the person's loss. I usually try to help people when they're dealing with loss. After they've tried to calm down a little bit, I usually remind them that death is inevitable. Because a lot of the times we approach God forgetting what his word says about certain things. Now, we would love to have our loved ones with us forever. Right? However, it just does not work that way. Because it is appointed unto man once to die, and after that is judgment. The whole point is, it is appointed. Watch me. That is one appointment that you cannot get away from. Because watch me, even if you died and you were raised from the dead, you still have to die again. Because you have to die. It is the one thing one appointment that you wouldn't be disappointed about in terms of you making that appointment. You have to die. We all have to, right? But I'm going back to what I was saying, which is being disappointed with God. A lot of people blame God for the things that they have been in. A lot of people came to church, came to the Lord because they expected to get something, right? They expected, I don't know, a husband, a wife, a job, a car, whatever it is, healing, whatever. But the point is, a good life. You wanted whatever from God. So you started to serve the Lord to get what you wanted. And I mean, nothing is wrong with that in a sense, right? It should not be the only reason you serve the Lord. But I mean, you do want whatever from the Lord. You want to be blessed. You want to live a life that has less headache and trouble. Okay. But while you are serving the Lord, you realize that some of the things that you have been asking God for, as I said, bear in mind, you had gone and put your own timeline to it. And when you put your timeline on it, you realize, this thing is not happening according to my timeline. But what do you say? This thing is not happening. God is not answering my prayer. And when you say things like that, you begin to get disappointed. So watch what happens. By the next time you have the opportunity to believe the Lord for something else, you begin to question. Not only that, let me put a different slant on this. What about when the Lord promised you something? And he used somebody to promise you. So you're praying. So like me, for example, I could use a very practical example. I don't have no shame and I don't have no secrets. So I don't have a vehicle at the moment. I've been out of a vehicle for almost a year straight ahead, but my vehicle was giving trouble for quite a while. So off and on between 2.5 years, 2 years to 2.5 years, I've been in and out of a vehicle. But for the most part, out of that time, if I drove a vehicle, I had to be renting one and so forth, right? Now, it's God that gives me the schedule that I keep, and I have a very busy schedule. So I have been praying and asking the Lord, I don't know how you're going to do it, but please send me a vehicle. Now, somebody might be listening and saying, well, woman, why you ain't find money and go and buy a vehicle? You have a vehicle selling. Well, I don't have the money to buy one. Period. I don't have it. So I've been waiting on the Lord. Lord, bless me with a vehicle. I don't know how you're going to do it. But there has been other times that I have prayed and I have asked the Lord for certain things. And people will come, individuals who don't know anything about the prayer I've prayed, they may come and they may say, the Lord said to me to give you so and so and so and so. And of course, I will be very happy. I will be very excited because I figure, all right, the Lord is hearing my prayer. And then sometimes I'm waiting on this thing that the person promised that they said, God said to them to give to me. And I'm waiting, and then the thing comes and falls through. Who do I get vexed with now? Now, for me, I figure, well, it's God that promised me in the first case. So if God promised me this thing, I have to talk to God about it, right? So I'll be like, Lord, what is happening? But even while you're asking the Lord what is happening, if you're honest with yourself, you know you're vexed. You know you're feeling the little anger stirring up. You're feeling the disappointment for sure, right? Because why? You had an arrangement in your mind. The person came and said, God say, so you figure this thing has to come to pass. So then what do you begin to do? You begin to feel as if God is giving you a 619. Now, some people would not want to admit that. But I will be frank with you. And if you're honest with yourself, you would realize that many of the times when those of you who are believers, those of you who have been believing the Lord for certain things, and you realize that you cannot worship God the way you used to worship before, or maybe you just can't. You sing two little songs, but I'm talking about deep worship, deep reaching out to God. You realize that you can't do it. You know why you can't do it? Maybe you need to check yourself and see if you trust God still. Because a lot of times when you have been disappointed, one of the things that are interfered with is your ability to trust the one who disappointed you. That is the reality. You are unable to really trust as you want to trust. Okay? You used to trust before, and once disappointment comes, you figure, I'm not so sure I can trust this person again. And in this case, the person can be God. God said, I didn't see this thing happen. The next time somebody tell me the Lord say, what do? Me? You might even tell the person, okay, thank you. But really and truly, you don't believe it. Really and truly, you're not embracing it. Because deep in your heart, you figure, God might disappoint you again. Are you one of those persons? That is the thing you have to ask yourself. Are you one of those persons who have been disappointed, not just by human beings now, but you feel as if God has left you in the lurch? You feel as if you have asked God for things and he did not give it to you. And as a result, you are maybe more than you think angry at God. Are you one of those persons? It's important for you to be able to examine yourself and see whether or not you have been disappointed by God. Whether or not you have allowed your disappointment, whether it be from what you assume is God disappointed you, or others that you, loved ones or whoever that disappointed you. You have to be able to examine yourself and find out and see, what am I going to do now about this disappointment? We have seen, I'm sure we have seen movies, but remember, most movies are based on some reality, right? Where people are so angry. But what really was the stem of the anger? Disappointment. Think about it. You have so many people. Well, I shouldn't just say movie. We see it in real life too. A man is disappointed that the woman that he trusted is unfaithful to him, and he kills her. What it is that caused that? Disappointment. He expected her to be true to him, and it didn't happen that way. And we see these things happening. Disappointment, or rather the way we respond to disappointment, is so critical as we live our daily lives. One of the things you need to understand, you have just a few more minutes. One of the things you need to understand is that if you expect, and I'm going back to what my friend Bella said on the chat, if you set expectations that are so high, maybe even above expectations that you would even set for yourself, you are in for disappointment. So you need to quite possibly lower your expectations. So watch me. When you are expecting, somebody said to you, yes. So imagine, let's say somebody is abroad. I'm just giving you some scenarios and you can see the relevance of it. Somebody is abroad, they promise to send you some money. Whether it is that they owe you the money or whether it is just a gift, it doesn't matter. But the person said to you, I'm going to send you some money. All right. You need to understand that life happens. So though the person's intentions were to send you that money, what if when the person got ready to leave home to send you the money, they, I don't know, let's say, God forbid, but they slipped and they fell. Now this person, according to how bad the fall was, end up in hospital. You home, you where you are, maybe the arrangement was for you to go and stand up by, Western Union or one of them to collect the money. So you go in, you wait, well, maybe you're waiting because you have to wait for the confirmation code and whatnot to come. And you're vexed to boss. You're vexed. You start to say certain things about the person. They're never reliable, and you start to say all kind of things. Now, obviously you're disappointed, and you said all manner of things about the person. The person might even be your friend or your family, right? Now, because you set your expectation so high, and maybe what you even did is maybe you were owing somebody, so you tell the person, here what, I'm going and collect some money later on, so I'll give you money this evening. So you're vexed because you figure not only are you disappointed, but now you have to disappoint somebody else. And as a result of that, you're angry. By the time the person calls, you ready to fly on them, not even giving the person an opportunity to explain what happened. And that has happened to me too. Not about the money part, but just generally in life. And that is why I can share that with you. But I'm saying, if in the first place, from the time the person said, I'm going to send the money to you, you should begin to think, here what? Yes, I want the money. Yes, I know that the person usually, I could trust them to send the money, but just in case something happens, let me leave room in my mind. Let me leave room that something can happen and the person might not get to their intended destination. I believe this is one strategy that you can use when you are dealing with promises, or when you are dealing with expectations. You function from the place where you understand early, hear what? There is a chance, although I am expecting this, or I'm believing for this, there is a chance, because I'm dealing with another human being, there is a chance that what I am expecting, it might not happen. I hope that I have encouraged you today. Yes, you are going to be disappointed. But even if you are disappointed, I beg you, do not treat with disappointment from the place of unforgiveness and bitterness and anger and the like. Because you can end up harming yourself and relationships that you might have, all because you did not handle your disappointment well. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can do so, 419-9445. I trust that you will have a really great day, and may God's blessings really be upon you, just as you go about doing whatever you're doing today. Until we chat again, that'll be next week, Monday, God's willing. Have yourself a really productive week, productive rest of your day, and God's blessings upon you. We have just about 1 more minute. I'm going to just be waiting on the technicians to just come as they take over from me. God's blessings on you.
Informative, entertaining, and first. Every hour on the hour.
This is the latest news update as produced by the Northern News Network. When I return, I'll have the details. Gittins Home and Garden Center, your main pillar for agricultural supplies in Grenada. We supply fertilizers, herbicides, seedlings, and nursery supplies diesel water pumps, walk behind tillers,